So, welcome today to Volunteer Recognition, Motivation, and Appreciation in Diverse Settings with our special guest, Faiza Venzant, CVA. What we'll cover today, we'll explore volunteer recognition by discussing applying the power of personal gratitude to volunteer recognition, the benefits and challenges of volunteer recognition plans. Plus, we'll gain tools for recognizing volunteers with a wide range of motivators. Stay tuned to the end where we'll discuss how practicing gratitude supports you as a leader of volunteers, understanding how your unique volunteers feel when receiving recognition. That'll be an interesting discussion. And we'll hope to leave today's session filled up with gratitude and ready to share. So really look forward to this being an uplifting time for all volunteer leaders present. So let's go ahead and dive in. What is volunteer recognition?
So we always like to kind of start us off definition time. So intentional acknowledgement, appreciation, encouragement of individuals who are freely contributing their time, skills, and community care. So that sense of belonging, we always talk about that community being so strong as a driver of volunteer engagement, motivation, bringing in diverse volunteer communities together. That's the definition we're going to drive behind volunteer recognition today. So Faiza, I'll turn it over to you as you start to take us into that definition and what we're going to be talking about. Oh, I think you're still on mute.
I was just making fun of myself not more than 5 minutes ago for this Zoom world that we're in and still forgetting to unmute myself. So hi everyone, my name is Faiza. I'm joining you from Temecula, California, and so excited to be here to talk to you today about recognition and motivation. I've been in the field of volunteer engagement for about 25 years, and this is a topic that's really important to me for a few reasons. So one is, as a CVA, someone who's certified in volunteer administration, and I see there's a bunch of CVAs on the call. Hi, Kelly, Adam, Trudy, Barb, Melissa, Kate, Lauren, Jennifer, I see you, and hi to my neighbor Regina in Temecula. As someone who's been doing this work for about 25 years, it's taken me a while to understand that we are more than just the nuts and bolts of what we do, right? We are also strategic leaders. And oftentimes we can think about recognition at the end of what we do when we think about the volunteer cycle, but there's things that you can always be doing to plan ahead for recognizing your volunteers. That's something that I've learned in my time working in this field. I've also made a ton of mistakes when it comes to recognizing volunteers. And even after all this time, there's so much to learn about how people like to feel appreciated. And so that's why I'm excited about this work today. I'm also really passionate about equity in volunteer engagement. And I think that acknowledging that people are different and have different ways in which they like to be appreciated and acknowledged, and different ways in which they're motivated is also part of how we think about diversity and inclusion and how we make people feel welcome and like their contribution matters. So to get us started, I have a question for all of you. Today is Thankful Thursday, and using a word or two really quickly in the chat, tell me what it is that you're thankful for today. And once you're done putting that into the chat, take a minute to just read what other people are putting into the chat as well. So in the chat, using one word, what are you thankful for today? Wow, it's going by so fast, but I'm seeing a lot about family. I'm seeing a lot about health, air. I'm seeing a lot in relation to faith.
I gotta stop you, Faiza. I saw leftovers. I love that because when I have a leftover lunch in my fridge, it does bring me joy where I'm like, yes, there's a plan for lunch. So sorry, back to family, community. I love that one.
Community. But wait, I also saw Diet Coke. I saw frizzy hair control products, I think. My husband waking up, all those kinds of things. And AK says, Diet Coke represent. I'm a Coke Zero girl myself, but yes. And Mariah says, volunteers who advocate for our organization. You know, thanks for sharing all of that. Seeing what all of you have to be thankful for is energizing, and it helps me feel really grounded in my own gratitude. Oftentimes, right, we are really quick to say what we're grateful for. And Amber, I have to acknowledge your new grandson. That's so cool. people love to tell you what they're thankful for, but how often do we ask them that, right? This is something that is a simple practice that we can do when we're interviewing volunteers, right? When we are doing an icebreaker, a group panel, even just when people are checking in the morning or in the afternoon. It's a quick question you can have if you've got a database that allows you to do that. And just asking people what they're grateful for. You can often find out a lot about people just from that one question. You know, my horses keep me grounded, Carrie says. It tells me a little bit about Carrie just in that one answer, right? Or somebody talking about frizzy hair or leftovers or being a grandparent. Just asking a simple question like that can be really powerful and can help you really to um, cement and build bonds with people as well. So thank you all for sharing about Thankful Thursday. To get us started, what we're going to be doing today is talking about gratitude and appreciation, and we're going to be talking about the role of inclusion in how we build our recognition practices into the work that we do. We're then going to understand why appreciation is not one size fits all, and I'll share a bit of a fail on my part to illustrate that point. And then we're going to explore two tools, and I just want you to know that these are just tools, and there's just two of them. There's many tools out there that can help you to better understand how your volunteers like to be appreciated or how they like to be motivated. I'm just going to start you off with two today. And they, I hope, will help you in your recognition practice as a leader of volunteers. So let's start with a question. And the question that I like to ask is, what is so great about gratitude? What you're looking at on the screen is part of my daily gratitude practice. I'm going to shout out to my friend Erin, who is on this webinar, because Erin's actually participated in this gratitude practice with me when she's visited my home. Each day, I write down something I'm grateful for at the end of the day. And then today, I might say something like, it was this webinar and all of you, like that might be something that I put in my gratitude jar at the end of the day. On New Year's Day, I empty the jar and I look back at everything that I had to be grateful for to start. And that's the way I start my year. And it's such a wonderful way to bring in a new year and to also have appreciation for the year that was, especially sometimes when you've gone through a year that's been really tough. And Emily says Irvin is a cute name. Oh, you should see him, Emily. He's cute in person too. And he's the basis of some of today's webinars, so I appreciate him for all of those things. So in 2014, on New Year's Day, after going through about 200 little pieces of paper, I opened one which said, "Hey, cuteness, will you marry me?" And that's how my husband proposed to me. And imagine getting a message like that, you know, from someone that you care about when you're already in such a really, really deep state of gratitude. So for me, as a leader of volunteers, practicing gratitude has made me really curious about gratitude. It's made me really curious about appreciation and recognition as well. And one of the things that I want to kind of draw, you know, to your attention to is the difference between gratitude and appreciation. So gratitude and appreciation, they're in the same family, and quite simply, gratitude is the state that, you know, of being and what you're feeling, and then appreciation is what you do to act on it, right? And for me, working in the not-for-profit sector all this time, there's a lot of harm, there's a lot of sadness, there's a lot of helplessness that we can feel every day in our work. And we're tasked with engaging volunteers to tackle some of the world's greatest problems, right? Like food insecurity, illness, climate change, end of life care, you know, and those are just to name a few. So for me, a daily gratitude practice is a reminder of goodness, right? And that there's positivity and that there's goodness in the world, and that there are good people, that there are good moments, there are good places in your day, in your life, in your community, in your neighborhood. And that has really helped me to just sustain my energy in this profession, because it can feel really, really heavy sometimes. And so this is something that I do, not just for in my personal life, but it really does help to inform me in my work life as well. One of the things that I realized, and what has been a real wake up moment for me, is that if you truly aren't feeling grateful and then you go to act on appreciation and recognition from there, when you go to express that appreciation, it doesn't come across as authentic. It doesn't come across as genuine. It can come across as something that you're doing to check off your list, right? Or to get to the end of the volunteer cycle. So if you have the opportunity to create this gratitude practice, it doesn't have to be what I do, but for whatever it is that you do in your life, that is something that can help you when it comes to you planning for volunteer recognition. We also know that there are so many benefits to our brain when we practice or are feeling grateful, right? That feeling of reading all your notes in the chat, just now for Thankful Thursday already has uplifted me, right? Has already brought my energy up. Um, and so, what a great feeling if you could have that every day. And if you are operating from that place when you are connecting with your volunteers, and especially if you're operating from that place when you're getting ready to thank them and feel appreciation for them, even if it's just at the end of the shift, or if it's at a planned recognition event, but being in that state of gratitude is a really great place to start and to be. So we know that the connection, so now we know sort of that connection from that state of gratitude to acting on gratitude and appreciation. And what does this have to do with inclusion? What does it have to do with making people feel like they're welcome, like they belong, and like their contributions matter? I love this quote by George Dye that says, inclusion is not bringing people into what already exists. It is making a new space, a better space for everyone. I think this is a really interesting way to think about, there are practices and there are things that we do in our work. Are we, when we think about inclusion, are we trying to just open the door and say, come into a space, or are we trying to create a space that will work for everybody? And acknowledging that some of the spaces we might already have might already be harmful. And no matter how wide we open the door, it doesn't actually change the space that already exists. So let me tell you about a time where I got it really wrong. I had the opportunity with a former employer of mine to unveil a new community space, and it came together largely due to the efforts of volunteers who planned for this space, who built this space over many, many months. We wanted the users of this space to know that volunteers were at the heart of creating the space. So as staff, we decided to name a bench after two of our lead volunteers who were both named Miriam. So I told the first Miriam about the bench. She burst into tears. She was so honored. She felt so valued. Her family, she is a descendant of Holocaust survivors. And so for her, seeing her family's name on a bench had a really significant meaning to her, right? She had lost a lot of her family's history and documents, and being able to see that somewhere just meant a lot to her. I left that conversation with Miriam and I was like patting myself on the back. I thought I was a superstar. I was like, wow, what a great job I did. I made that volunteer feel so appreciated. I was on a high, right? And probably wrote about that in my gratitude note for the end of the day. And then I told the second Miriam about the bench. When I was talking to her about it, she grew visibly uncomfortable. She was upset, and in my mind, I'm like, what's wrong? Like, why is she so upset about this? So Miriam looks me like dead in the eyes and she says to me, as a Muslim woman, and she says that to me, and I am a Muslim woman. So imagine how it felt to hear that, coming out of her mouth as a start. She says to me, I give as an expression of my faith. I don't do it for publicity. I don't do it for recognition. I love my community and so I serve. And having my name on the bench just makes me feel really uncomfortable. So I'm knocked down a few pegs here, and rightly so, and I walk away from that conversation feeling awful. I had gotten it so wrong. First of all, we had made a decision as staff without involving volunteers, and we had this intention of making them feel appreciated and wanting others to know that they were appreciated, and we did it on our own without involving them. And secondly, I made really poor assumptions that both Miriams would be excited about this recognition in this way, and I didn't take the time to think about that there would be any other option, right? That they might not like it. I didn't broach it that way. I went into the conversation like this is a win, especially because I'd had the first conversation with first Miriam first. So because of my gratitude practice, this daily work that I do, I was really able to reframe that experience and turn it, from a failure to a learning experience, and then to be grateful for that and sort of to move forward. And what I learned from that very intimately is that appreciation is not one size fits all. Um, and I also learned, and Court, you could change the slide. I learned that I need to be better at finding out what is meaningful for people instead of assuming that what I know is best, right? We're all different, right? And even when we say, what are you thankful for today? Our responses are so different. If we were to ask each other, what makes us feel as though we were appreciated, our response would change as well. So, really quickly, I am going to ask you all, just before we get to the next slide, I'm going to ask you all in the chat really, really, really quickly. Is there some time in your life that you felt really appreciated and really thanked? And what was that like for you? Pop that into the chat really quickly. I'd love to see what some of your answers are. So, a time in your life where you felt really appreciated um, and really valued for something that you did. Tell us a little bit about it in the chat. So, I'm seeing from Rachel a handwritten, drawn card and message for a young person. Barbara says being called out in a newsletter. And Andrea, hope I got your name right, says getting a big promotion. And Jennifer says being asked to present at a conference, getting a personal email, an employee spotlight. Oh, Catherine says my community sang a song for me, all 85 of them. Getting a governor's award. Congratulations, Jennifer. I'm seeing so much in this chat, and I hope you're all seeing it too, about the power of a written card, right? And how important those handwritten notes are, right? Getting those awards as well. Stephanie says volunteers made a video for you. So this is it right here. Appreciation is not one size fits all, and there are so many different ways in which we can say thank you. But for each individual, there are ways in which we can feel thanked. Okay. So before I get to a tool you can use, I want to share another quick story about me and my cute husband, Irvin. So yeah, Irvin often appears in my gratitude practice, and I learn a lot from that relationship. So when my husband and I first started dating, we had a lot of many firsts as a couple. And one of them was our first birthdays that we were celebrating as a couple. So for my birthday, Irvin got me this Pandora bracelet. It was silver and it has this pave pink heart on it. It was shiny. It came in this beautiful box and in a beautiful bag. And I hated it. At the time, I had a boss who had a Pandora bracelet, and every time she achieved something or had a celebration, people that knew and loved her would give her a charm. And she had recently added a charm for completing a marathon. She loved her bracelet. She had several actually, because she had so many charms. So in that moment, I had this visualization of my life with Irvin and having this armful of bracelets and charms, and a partner feeling like they had expressed their love to me and me feeling indifferent and also me feeling misunderstood, right? I really, really loved Irvin a lot. And so in that moment, I told him the truth. And what I said to him is, jewelry is not the way to my heart. And one of the things I learned from that incident that day is that it's okay for you to ask for what you want. And it made me think, in my everyday life, am I asking volunteers what they want? Am I asking them what do they need to feel appreciated, right? And so I want to start off talking to you about this idea that we may have the intention of saying thank you, but do people really walk away from our interactions with them feeling as though they are appreciated, right? In my husband's case, his love was genuine. The time he spent at the store picking it out, what was an effort for him was such a beautiful intention, not to mention the financial investment, but the impact was really flat. He wanted me to feel loved and treasured, and I felt misunderstood and indifferent. So how do we ask people how they want to be appreciated, right? I am loving, I don't know, Elizabeth, are you seeing any other interesting things in the chat? I'm loving all of the things that people are saying about love languages, which is what we're going to be talking about next, and how they love to be appreciated.
And I think there's just such a diversity there. Like, I think it's going to be one of those chats that I believe it goes out with the follow-up on Monday as well. So there's just a lot to just read through there. I think it's showing the human side of all the participants. So thank you guys for being so honest and transparent. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and that's such a great point, Elizabeth, because we are humans connecting with humans, right? And that's something that we really need to understand as well. All right. So I want to recommend to you a book called The Five Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. And a lot of you have been talking about your love languages in the chat. And this is iteration of Gary Chapman's book, The Five Languages of Love. What he's done is worked with an HR professional, Paul White, to reframe those five languages of love into five languages of appreciation in the workplace. Again, this is just one tool, but what I think that it does is the three main things that the authors were hoping. One is to have authenticity in the way that we appreciate each other in the context of working with volunteers, right? The second is it helps us to build relationship, okay? So if you think about volunteers and you think about that first instance that you have to say thank you, when you get it wrong, you're already starting to build, or maybe starting to build, a little bit of mistrust, maybe making that volunteer feel a little bit indifferent. And what about if you were able to do the reverse of that, right? Thank them in a way that was authentic, that helped to solidify and strengthen your relationship, and that really communicated respect for their time and for them as a person. So I love this tool. And again, it's just one tool, but I think it's a really easy and simple way to start to try to understand people. So, what are the five languages of appreciation in the workplace? Let me start with words of affirmation, right? I saw in the chat box how many people had a newsletter written about them or got a handwritten note or things like that. For those people, words of affirmation, when they were recalling something that made them feel good, um, was a way that made them feel appreciated. So words of affirmation can be leaving a note for somebody, or and telling them something specific that you value about them. So it's not just a note to say thank you. It's a note to say, I really appreciate the way that you did X, right? Or it was really outstanding when I saw you do such and such. Or one of the children in our childcare mentioned how fun it is whenever you're in to play music and read stories, right? So really tell them about a specific trait or a specific behavior or an example that you value about them, right? So words of affirmation can happen in a conversation. They can have it happen in a text. How cool would it be to get a text if you're a words of affirmation person, after a shift, or when you're, halfway between one shift and the next one, right? Just to build on that communication. Quality time, and I'm a quality time girl, is when you give your focused attention for a period of time just to check in or hang out. Like, there can be no reason for it at all, but just because you know that is something that a quality of time person really enjoys, and for no reason at all, is often, really impactful. Oftentimes we structure quality time around birthdays or celebrations, or we schedule like phone calls and coffee dates and things like that. Quality time can even be just as effective as planning a 2-hour expensive meal. You can be just as effective at showing your appreciation through quality time just by popping by for 5 minutes, with a volunteer at the beginning of their shift, at the end of their shift, wherever it's appropriate, just to give them your focused attention for a period of time, just for no reason, just to check in, just to hang out, right? Maybe follow up on something that you noticed or you talked about the week before. Acts of service is another language of appreciation or love language. And that can be doing something for somebody, right? So it could be, hey, listen, I've got 10 minutes. Can I help you scrub the brushes in the barn? You've been doing an amazing job taking the horses out today. What can I do to help you, right? And helping somebody with a difficult part of a task that they have, right? Or I see you need to clean up from today's shift. Is there something that I can do to help you to make that a little bit easier, right? It's act of giving a little bit of your time, but helping somebody with a task. And acts of service can be really, really meaningful, especially when a volunteer task can be cumbersome, can be difficult, can be heavy, right? Think about some of those environments that we depend and rely on volunteers so heavily for. Acts of service can really help there as well. And sometimes when you're in the midst of an act of service with somebody, it could also lead to some great conversations as well. Tangible gifts is another one. And tangible gifts can be really simple, right? Some people will say, like, I don't always have a budget for a tangible gift. Tangible gift can be something as simple as bringing somebody a glass of water, right? Maybe getting them their favorite drink or a snack, something that they might like, right? I know somebody who loves Post-it notes, right? So I always grab like funny Post-it notes or things like that that I find at the Dollar Tree in the US, or shout out to the Dollarama in Canada. Sometimes I'll mail them like a Post-it note randomly because I know that that's something, or a set of Post-it notes randomly because I know it's something that they enjoy. And there are people for whom tangible gifts is a way that they feel appreciated and valued. Physical touch is one that you've got to be really, really strategic about in your work, because physical touch in the workplace is something we've got to be sensitive about. So it can be as simple as a high five, a fist bump, a handshake. It could also be, if you're a hugger and you know someone's a hugger, can I give you a hug? Asking for consent and permission ahead of time as well. So knowing and understanding how people like to be appreciated is really valuable. One of the things that I suggest, if it's something that you want to put into practice, is when you are interviewing volunteers, right? Or even if you've got an application or an intake form, ask people, how do you like to be appreciated, right? Or tell me about a time and where you felt thanked and valued. It takes seconds, right? I asked you that question and you were able to tell me really quickly in the chat some really great and meaningful examples. So build this into the front end when you're getting to know a volunteer. Build these questions in at the beginning of your work, and make note of what your volunteers are telling you, right? So that when it comes time for recognition, creating a recognition plan, creating opportunities to recognize your volunteers, you've already gotten to know them a little bit, and you've already gotten to know and understand a bit about their languages of appreciation. If you were to look up the website for languages of appreciation at the work, and if you at work and you do have a bit of a budget, there is a quiz that you could actually share with people, that takes them through a series of questions, and you can actually find out what their languages of appreciation are. It might be a really cool thing to do at a volunteer orientation or a training as well. One of the things the authors of the book said that really stands out to me, and why I recommend this tool, is that each of us wants to know that what we are doing really matters. And I think that thinking about people being recognized in different ways, and taking the time to ask them, right? Not just saying, well, I did this, I did that, I tried, nothing's falling straight. Take the time to ask them, hey, what'd you think of the newsletter that I sent out, right? Or what'd you think of the event that we had? Whatever it is that you're doing, get some feedback and ask, right? It's so easy, and as we've demonstrated here today, when we ask people, people are really willing to tell us. Justin, I see your question in the chat. Where can you find the quiz? You can find the Languages of Love quiz. It's online, but if you wanted to do the quiz where the languages changed from relationships and love to languages of appreciation in the workplace, if you Google the book, The 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace, you can find the quiz. It's not free to do, but if you have some budget and you're able to do that, it's great. Otherwise, you can use the Languages of Love in the Workplace one as well, and just find a way to put some context around it if you're going to ask people about that. All right. So really quickly in the poll, Courtney, could you go back to the 5 languages of appreciation slide?
Absolutely.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. What is your primary language of appreciation? Just want to see I just want to demonstrate with you how easy it is to find out what someone's language of appreciation is. So we've got a poll up here for you.
Ooh. There's a lot of people responding. Thanks for participating. This is super fun.
Court, let us know when you're going to shut the poll down.
Okay, it's moving. So I'm gonna give people at least another minute. I think it looks like almost everyone is getting a chance to participate. That's in attendance right now, so that's cool.
And while people are doing that, I want to draw attention to Erin's comment in the chat. We can overdo volunteer recognition, and that can lead into centering volunteers instead of community in our work. And Erin is correct. You know, when we and it says, Erin says at the end, that can feed the volunteer saviorism mentality, and it's so true. And here's the thing: if you take the time to really be strategic about and think about your volunteer appreciation and recognition, how could you do it on an individual level? You don't have to do so much of it. You really don't have to do so much of it. Sometimes a handwritten note is enough. It doesn't need to be really complicated. It doesn't need to be really expensive either. And it really keeps the focus on an individual interaction versus just putting out recognition, and then wondering, you know, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall and like wondering, like, what is going to land, right? So thank you for that comment, Erin. I really appreciate it.
I'm going to go ahead and end the poll.
Yeah. A few people are putting theirs in the chat as well, so that's awesome.
And I'm going to share the results. So can everyone see that okay?
Yeah, thank you so much. So that didn't take us very long at all, just a couple minutes, right? And that is something, you know, that you could do at a volunteer orientation. It's something that you can do, a question you can ask, right? In an interview. I want to point out a comment from Kelly in the chat, and she said, I don't know if everybody sees it in the chat, but she says, or Kelly says, for me, quality of time and physical touch are the same. And this is true. People can have more than one language of appreciation. And that's also good to know, more ways in which you can show them how much you appreciate them. Awesome. Great, Court. So let's wrap up this part, because I really want to get to the next tool that we have to share. And you can close down the poll on your screen if it's showing. So something to keep in mind, your language of appreciation, right? So if you know that the way you feel appreciated is words of affirmation, right? Your language of appreciation is about how you receive appreciation, right? So that's about how you receive appreciation, right? So, you know, and my husband knows, I'm not a tangible gifts person, right? We laugh about it every time we pass a Pandora store. I'm not a tangible gifts person. I'm a quality time girl. So how you naturally give or express appreciation is often the same or easiest for you. So for example, when I want to be appreciative and thank somebody, it's easiest for me to want to take them out for a coffee or a phone call or do something where we have to spend time together, because it's how I receive appreciation. So it's easiest for me to express appreciation in that way. Your least valued language of appreciation is often the one that you don't speak well or at all. So for me, that's gift giving. I don't speak that language well. I stress out about it. I get really anxious when I have to give a gift to somebody, unless I know them really well, because I'm scared of messing it up. I'm scared of it not being authentic. I worry so much about whether they're going to like the gift or not. So a tip for you is find someone who speaks the language that is the least valued for you and try to understand why it's meaningful for them. Okay. My mom is a tangible gifts kind of person. She loves getting gifts. You could just give her a bowl of almonds and she will feel so loved and appreciated, right? It doesn't need to be something expensive. She grew up very, 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 very poor. She hardly ever got new clothes. Everything was hand-me-downs from her sisters who were older than her or her brothers who were older than her. So for her, getting something that's just for her is something that is very meaningful for her, makes her feel really appreciated. She also is a master gift giver. She loves to give gifts, and every day she will find a way to give you something. And what I've learned is just to take it and to say thank you, right? Even though it doesn't necessarily land with me, it's my mom. And so I know that's her way of showing love. Another thing to keep in mind is that differing languages can result in miscommunication. So when you don't feel appreciated, when you're saying thank you to someone and it doesn't make them feel appreciated, it can lead to distrust. It can lead to disengagement, indifference, and that's really not the kind of relationships that we're trying to cultivate with our volunteers. So just to say that genuine appreciation is received when you give or express in the recipient's language. So knowing your own language is great, and it's a wonderful place to start in understanding this, but genuine appreciation is received when you express it in the recipient's language. All right. So we have talked a little bit about gratitude. We've talked about appreciation. We've talked about a way to recognize volunteers. Another way to recognize volunteers is through motivation. And I want to share with you a tool. We're going to get to it in a minute, which is our motivational analysis quiz. And one of the things that I want to say is, as a leader, there are a couple things we need to keep in mind when it comes to how we motivate people. You don't have to be in a position of authority. You don't have to be in somebody who has direct reports in order to motivate other people. And you also don't have to be the boss to be a leader. And that's something that I really want to make clear. You can exhibit leadership skills and you can be motivational without having to be somebody's boss. Okay. So what's really important to recognize when it comes to motivation is it's not about what motivates you. So just like with genuine appreciation, it's not about, I know that being on a deadline is what motivates me and puts me under pressure. That is not necessarily going to motivate the people around me. And if I have a team of 5 people, they may all need to be motivated differently. So as a leader, it's not about what motivates you. Every person that you lead is motivated differently, and motivating someone in a way that is meaningful to them, right? So I have 2 boys, 2 very different personalities. One is motivated by achievement. So he gets motivated when he knows that there's an end, there's something to win. He likes to be the expert, right? And the other one is motivated by affiliation, right? He is motivated when we do a task together, when there's some fun and some play involved, right? I have to motivate them very differently. When I motivate them well and they do something well, it leads to, and this is something you can translate when you're partnering with volunteers, a sense of belonging, right? Feeling like I'm doing my job really well and I really belong here, right? This is where I should be serving and giving my time and my energy. It also makes a person feel supported, right? If I have a question, if I'm not sure, I know that I can go to my volunteer coordinator, my director of volunteers, whoever it is, because they understand me, right? They know what I need to feel empowered and excited to do the work that I'm going to do. Okay. When you motivate somebody as well in a way that speaks to them, it's so affirming, right? It's so affirming in that, they've chosen the right place, right? This is where I'm supposed to be, and this is how I'm supposed to be being part of my community. And so if you're feeling a high level of appreciation, right? If you're feeling a high level of motivation, what we hope is that in most cases, that also leads to low attrition and low turnover in volunteer roles that require low attrition and low turnover. Obviously, there are some where that's not a metric, right? But if you can really make people feel as though they're appreciated and that they are motivated well, that would lead to those behaviors of low attrition and turnover. So let's take a look at the motivational analysis quiz. This is from UServe Utah, and you'll get these in the slides, so you can always take this and use it with your volunteers. And again, this is something that you can do in the application phase, right? You don't need to wait until you've gotten to know a volunteer to ask these questions. Do this at the beginning, like do this at the front end of what you're doing, right? Ask your volunteers and get to know a little bit about how they're motivated. Basically, this quiz is 11 questions, and you ask the different questions, and you ask them to tell you which one in each set of phrases most closely fits their own experience. There's no wrong answers, and you just place an X before the letter of your choice. So after they've gone through, so for example, I'll take you through, let's say question number 1. When doing a job, I seek feedback. I prefer to work alone and am eager to be my own boss, or I seem to be uncomfortable when forced to work alone. So you ask them, out of these three, which one is the one that most closely fits with you, okay? And at the end of the quiz, so let's go to the next slide. All right. every one of those answers, A, B, or C, is affiliated with one of these words: achievement, influence, or affiliation. And once again, this is just one tool. This may work if you have a smaller group of volunteers. This may work when you have a process that allows volunteers to sit down and do something like this. You'll have to figure out a way, if this is a tool that works for you, to see how it could work in your organization. If not, it's just a impetus for you to go out there and try to find a tool like this, or take a tool like this and see how you can make it work for your organization. So what you do is you tally up and you find out how many of yours are achiever characteristics, influencer characteristics, or affiliator characteristics. And what's great about this tool is that once you have taken a volunteer through these tools, there's some kind of cheat sheet notes here for you as a leader of volunteers on what are the characteristics of an achiever, right? So that's my older son, for example. So for him as an achiever, his goals and interests are, how do I problem solve, right? I like to have great performance and success. So he is somebody that I know his strengths are, and he's such an achiever. Like, everything that's written here is so true. This kind of cheat sheet can take you through it, but he is someone who his strengths are: well organized. Yep, you should see his room. Makes his bed every morning. He's 8 years old. Innovative, takes initiative. Always the first one to take his dishes and put them in the sink. Is a planner and is a problem solver, right? Struggles and weaknesses: delegating to others. Absolutely, right? He likes to take on a project and do it himself. Doesn't want any help, right? Is impatient. The process is painful because I just want to get it done. I want to achieve, check it off my list, right? All of these characteristics will really, really, really help you in understanding. It could give you an insight. And again, these are not like stuck in stone. Some people might have achiever and influencer characteristics. But all of these are just little clues and little insights into what may motivate your volunteers. And then as you get to know them, you get to know a little bit more. I really like to use this tool when I'm recruiting for roles that require certain skill sets. So for example, if there's a role that is definitely, requires somebody with those achiever characteristics, things that need to get done, that focus on performance, that need to happen, and then I have somebody who's an affiliator that is going to be applying for that role, then I want to be honest about, here's what the role is going to be like. How does that sound to you, right? You may not be working in a team with people as an affiliator, right? It sounds to me like you like working with people, you like socializing, you're a great team player, but this is a role that requires you to be independent, right? It's not one where you're going to be chatting or laughing or having that experience. And then checking back in, is this really the role that you want, right? And if I have the opportunity, saying to them, I think you might be happier in this kind of role. What do you think about that? So having that conversation, but having it based on getting to know a person as well. I see some questions in the chat about getting copies of this. And yes, as Court mentioned, on Monday, you'll get a copy of all of the slides and the recording as well.
And we've got some great questions coming in. Are you seeing them too, Elizabeth?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think, Faiza, we talked a little bit about this before when we were planning for this, but there's that moment of when you have a small pool of volunteers, you can go really deep. And I did throw into the chat, if it went by too fast, there's just such a good chat going on. Like, we are suggesting, I think you've said, do this earlier. If you can do it earlier, then you'll learn more. You can prevent missteps. You'll know how to think about motivating the volunteer that you're bringing in for success. But I think, Faiza, what I'm also seeing here is that they have a larger volunteer pool. What do you recommend for a large pool? And then I think that the question we talked about before was just, how do you balance it? Because you do have different ones. So how do you make sure you're hitting all the marks when there's so many volunteers to be processing?
It's such a great question. And in my previous workplace where I worked, and why I think both of these tools are really useful is because they force you to remember that appreciation is not one size fits all, right? So when you have a large group of volunteers, what I would suggest is that you have a few different ways in which you're going to recognize volunteers. So in my previous workplace, during National Volunteer Week, we had a very diverse kit for National Volunteer Week and different ways to recognize volunteers. So for those people, that quality time was something that was important to them. We always offered like a chat with our CEO a few times, a morning time on a weekday, an evening time on a weekday, and a weekend, right? So what we would do is we would say, you can sign up for this during National Volunteer Week. And we'd have people sign up for that. We wouldn't have everybody sign up for that, but then we would also have coupons to some of our local bakeries and places in the neighborhood where people could go to pick up a free cupcake that week if that's something that they wanted, right? Or a discount somewhere, or a free bookmark download or something like that. And for those people, that tangible gifts were important. And I'll tell you that that group of people is really small. We had people that would go and, take their coupon and say like, hey, I volunteer at this organization, and can I turn this coupon in for a cupcake, right? You won't have every single volunteer do that, because not every single volunteer values that, right? For people for whom words of affirmation are important, right? Use a robocall app or something like that to send a pre-recorded message for National Volunteer Week and say thank you, right? Send out a text message for a volunteer that's really meaningful, right? Or a handwritten note, right? Plan those in advance. Like, sit down and plan for those volunteers for whom words of affirmation are important, right? Sit down and plan to do 5 or 6 cards a day for the next month if you need to, in order to reach those people, right? Or have a card writing party with a bunch of staff, and type up a few different notes on those volunteers that you can do. What it takes is planning and being strategic about it, and really valuing. If we want to say that we are diverse and we are inclusive, this is one of the ways in which we live out those values of inclusion, right? Is to recognize that people have different ways in which they want to be thanked, right? And Shirley, I see your comment, robocalls, cheapening it and making it AI. For some people, they might take it that way. I went to a conference in November and got a broadcast message after the conference just to say, hey, we loved having you at the conference. We hope everybody made it home safely. I loved that. It was a broadcast message. It wasn't targeted just to me. There was no ask in it. It was just a hope you got there safe. A week later, there was another message. Hey, you've left the conference 2 weeks ago, and we just wanted to let you know that if you're getting ready to reflect and think, all of the handouts are now available in the app, right? There's ways to use technology to our advantage. But again, it has to be intentional and it has to be meaningful, right? So yeah, use robocalls and use text messages, but don't be robotic about them, right? Don't be technical about them. Be intentional and be meaningful in the way that you do that, okay? I know we'll probably have some questions and some other comments, but I just want to really end with take today's learnings, and we've only had 45 minutes today. We're not going to solve the volunteer recognition issues, but I hope I've given you a couple things to think about. What you want to do first and foremost, and what I think is most important, is to plan ahead for recognition, okay? It shouldn't be the last thing you think about when it comes to volunteers. It should be something that you plan ahead for. So I'm seeing a lot of questions in the chat about, what about this and what about that, and my organization does this or my organization has that. We all have this terminal uniqueness about us, right? That makes us different, but we can all take the time to be strategic and to really plan ahead. That's what leaders do, right? We don't look for the solution in a box. We look for suggestions, and then we take them and we cater them, and we mold and shape them to our situation, and we make them work for us because we know our context the best. Download the motivational analysis quiz. There's been links to it in the chat today, and you'll get the slides afterwards. You can also look it up with Google, and then explore the 5 languages of appreciation at work and see if that's a tool that would work for you. And if none of these tools work for you, take a minute to really think about your organization, what the context is, and how you can apply some of these principles of wanting everyone to feel appreciated and recognized in the work that you do. So Elizabeth, let me turn it over to you to end us off and see if there's any questions we can answer in our last couple minutes together.
Oh, there's a couple, and one caught my eye and I completely went in one ear and out the other. I think it was just that moment of, I was going to answer it, but I think Faiza, you may have a word as well. That moment of, where do we get volunteers? I need to recruit the volunteers to be able to do this with them. I would say there's a tie into this because part of recognizing your volunteers and making people feel good about what they're doing, they have a sphere of influence. So if I've been appreciated, I might tell my mom, I might tell my sister. If it's something that I'm proud of and I like that note or that recognition, I might share it on my social media. So I think part of this is, yes, recruitment is always going to be that challenge that we're all facing, but it is that moment of thinking through some of this underlying piece. You don't have to recruit as hard when those people who are in your program are becoming your advocates and wanting more of their friends and family and coworkers to join because they feel so appreciated and they think it's becoming such a special community. So I would just say it's not the end all be all for recruitment, but all of these things make it, I think, Faiza, I love the words you said, that space that welcomes so that when they come through that door, that space has become very important for everyone who's coming through that door.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
It also looks like we've got another question about motivating and appreciating volunteers who maybe only show up once or twice a year. So maybe those are special event volunteers. How do you keep them engaged, motivated, and appreciated to come back when maybe it might be 6 to 12 months before you see them again?
I mean, just ask them, right? What is it about this opportunity that would want you to come back next year? How was your experience, right? And if volunteers are doing things at a special event like complaining about, right? If you're not asking for feedback, especially when you have a lot of time in between when you see a volunteer again, right? So if you're not asking for feedback from those event volunteers about what their experience was, that's really important. So first of all, you want to say something like, how was the experience for you? Gaining an understanding of their satisfaction in their experience. Any suggestions for how we can improve your volunteer experience next year? And sometimes you'll get really interesting things. Like it would be great if there was water on hand, right? It would be great if we could get parking closer to the venue, right? I didn't feel as though you communicated with me well enough. And so next year, when you go back to that group to recruit them again, you start with, we heard what you said. You wanted water. So just letting you know that at this year's event, when you check in, there'll be water bottles or whatever it is that you decide you're going to do. We heard you when you said we weren't communicating enough. Here are all the ways that you could tap into us on our Facebook page, through our app, sign up for text messaging, check your email on this day, and this day. That's when we'll be in touch with you. And let them know that you've heard what they said. It makes people feel really respected when you acknowledge that, hey, you took the time to give us the feedback. We actually read it, and here's how we're going to act on it as well. The other thing you want to think about is you don't need to invest as much time motivating a volunteer that is coming around, once or twice a year as you do for someone that needs to do that several times a week or every single week. So as much as appreciation is not one size fits all, motivation is not one size fits all as well. And you can tailor and taper your efforts as well as when you're doing that as well.
The only other thing, Court, then I'll pass it to you to kind of bring us on home for the final. There was a part where Faiza, you said this as we were talking, and I was sharing, I think Court, you shared it too, but at that moment of stepping outside of yourself, because we hear what we hear from the place we live in our words of affirmation or gratitude. And I was sharing my poor husband, that I did the dishes. Fantastic. I've done them 4 times today. So when you hit 4, then you bring me back that, like, I did the dishes. But that moment of stepping outside yourself, I think that was as we were discussing this, I was like, he's probably just looking for some words of affirmation that says, thank you for doing the dishes. It's not meaningful to me until you've ranked up a few more times. But, like that moment of stepping outside yourself to say, this is what I'm hearing. And this is what I'm seeing, and not thinking about it from your personal opinion, but trying to see what you're seeing around you. I just wanted to throw that out because I thought that was so powerful when you said that. That's so important to take those moments to look in versus being in the middle of the conversation.
I really think that, what makes us successful as leaders of volunteers is the more we know ourselves, right? And the more we're able to step outside of ourselves. We can only step outside of ourselves the more we know ourselves, right? So that's so important. And Elizabeth, if you were to, respond to your husband by saying like, well, that's great, I did it 4 times, it's not going to make him feel good. It's not going to make him want to do it a second time, right? But if you were to say to him, thanks a lot, that really helped me. It's great that you did that. And anytime you want to do that, it would just make me feel really appreciated, or make me feel like really helped. He's going to do it again because he's going to want to make you smile like that. He's going to want to get that positive feedback from you again. So
Exactly.
stepping outside yourself, right, to not with your first reaction, because I would say the same thing, is what's going to help deepen that bond, right, and that feedback that he's looking for. So what a great example.
Yeah, I love that. And I loved what you said about water too, because the nonprofit environment I'm working in, it's outside, it's very hot. And one of our big annual programs is 6 weeks in June and July. And so one of the things that we always have is popsicles. And I know that sounds like kind of silly, but the popsicles make everyone's shift because it's very hot outside and it's refreshing, and it's very inexpensive to get a lot of popsicles for 100 people, and to have that on hand. And so you would, the creative thing that you might come up with for what works for your community and what your programming is like. So
like when you imagine a whole bunch of people getting together after feeling super accomplished, physically drained, right, from the heat of the sun, and then sitting together to have popsicles, right? It brings back memories of your childhood, maybe, right? Or like cool hot summer days, or the last time you had a popsicle. Like it's just such a cool way to wrap things up or end things up. Food is always a great way to do that for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. We could keep talking about this for a long time, but I want to say thank you. I know the hour goes by really quickly, and we had such an amazing group of volunteer leaders here today. I want to give a big thank you to Faiza Venzant for being with us today. If you want to learn more about the Council for Certification in Volunteer Administration, where Faiza is the executive director, you can head to cvacert.org to learn about that professional certification in the field of volunteer leadership. And if you want to learn more about the work that we do here at Get Connected by Galaxy Digital, representing, actually at this point, I think it's over 50,000 nonprofits and more than 2 million volunteers at this point. But we do offer volunteer management solutions for every organization, program size, and budget. So please do reach out to us to learn more about that. And we're going to follow up with you on Monday. You're going to receive the recording, the slides, the chat download, a certificate of attendance, as well as a number of volunteer appreciation, recognition, and motivation resources that were mentioned here today, and some more. So we'll be following up with you for a lot of that. And you can also head to our blog at galaxydigital.com/blog, where you can use a search bar and look up, I think we have about 20 resources on different ideas for volunteer appreciation. There's even a resource there to help you if you do need to make a volunteer appreciation speech, if you're having an event, and also some inexpensive gift or event ideas. So there's some great resources there for you. And again, just want to say thank you so much. We know volunteer leaders are incredibly busy, and so we're just grateful that you took the time to spend with us today to talk about this. And we hope to see you in May, on May 23rd, where we'll have Dr. Sue Carter-Kale, and we'll be talking about volunteer engagement, reclaiming community roots. Sue is the author of and researcher at volunteercommons.com. So if you're familiar with Sue's work, definitely hope to see you there. So that's all I have to say. Anything else that anyone would like to share before we wave goodbye?
Happy Global Volunteer Month, and good luck everybody with your National Volunteer Week appreciation. One last point that I'll make that Elizabeth brought up in our previous conversation is pay attention to the people who don't show up. Pay attention to the people who take the extra swag or who love the food, and just note, what is making people, what are people gravitating to or away from? Make note of that. It's always something to learn on to build for next year. You guys are all amazing. Thank you for all you do to build healthy communities. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. We'll see you next month, and look for that email in your inbox on Monday. Thank you, Faiza. Thank you, AK. Thank you, Elizabeth. I'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.